Teaching students who are exceptional, diverse, and at risk in the general education classroom. Chapter 4, Teaching Culturally and Linguistically Diverse Students. Copyright 2018, Pearson Education. Chapter 4 helps us understand how to better meet the needs of culturally and language. Chapter 4 helps us better understand how to meet the needs of culturally and linguistically diverse students in our classrooms. Begin by reading the interview with Christina on page 109. Consider, how did Christina create an engaging, culturally responsive classroom? What have you seen other teachers do during your field experiences? What steps will you take in the future to help culturally and linguistically diverse students in your classrooms? Your learning objective for this section is describe what you can do as a classroom teacher to learn about your own culture and your students' cultures and communities. Very few countries have as much cultural diversity as the United States. Once considered the majority, Caucasians are now minorities in many school systems across the country. This includes Miami, Philadelphia, Baltimore, and Los Angeles. Majority-minority school systems have implications because our schools were developed based on traditional Anglo-European language, culture, and values. In addition, many students in diverse urban school settings live in poverty and may not speak English fluently. Unfortunately, the achievement gaps between white students and traditional minority groups continue to be present in schools. Minority groups have higher dropout rates and are more likely to be identified for special education programs. In addition, these students are less likely to take advanced placement courses or be identified as gifted. Reasons for the achievement gap are complex and not easily addressed. Traditional Anglo-European teaching strategies may not be culturally responsive and may not match the learning styles of students. Minority students also have few role models of success and are more likely to live in poverty, which limits their access to quality enrichment experiences and summer programs. Response to intervention and culturally responsive teacher may hold the keys to success for these students. Culturally responsive teaching requires the use of cultural knowledge, past experiences, and learning styles of minority students to make classroom instruction more effective and relevant. Culturally relevant teaching involves having high expectations for all students, using active teaching that is engaging and responsive, using language that reflects sensitivity when responding to students, engaging in small group instruction, and providing opportunities for students to participate in discussions. In addition, teachers should hold positive perspectives about families and parents' desires for student success. Finally, the use of multiple assessment tools will help teachers develop a clear understanding of each student's strengths and weaknesses.
Hello and welcome to Teachings in Education, Strategies for Culturally Responsive Teaching. How can teachers create a more inclusive environment? First off, teachers should get to know their students. This means knowing more about them than their academic strengths and weaknesses, but getting to know them on a personal level. Next, have high academic expectations for all students. Too often, teachers, for some reason, believe that ESL students aren't capable of learning because of their language barrier. This does a disservice to them. Provide opportunities for these students to speak English. The more opportunities and practice students have to speak English, the better they will become in speaking English. Encourage students to try their best in speaking. Display some of your students' culture in the classroom. For example, if you teach a classroom with mostly African American students, have up some posters of individuals such as Martin Luther King or Rosa Parks. Continuing, incorporate visuals into your lessons. Communication can get distorted between various cultures. However, there can be no confusion when everyone in the classroom is viewing the same thing. Incorporate a multicultural curriculum. This includes teaching from a curriculum that represents the cultural history of the students, and it highlights the most effective teaching methods. Hear your students' stories. Provide assignments such as culture studies where students can talk about their cultures and about themselves to the entire classroom. Next, work to build relationships with parents of your students. The research is out there. Parents of ESL students are not as involved as typical parents. And the last strategy, which is often overlooked, is to get your students' names right. That means being able to pronounce their names, because when you mispronounce their names, they get the feeling that you don't actually care about them. Now I would like
Macroculture is a shared core culture of a country. The U.S. macroculture would likely include values such as equality, justice, human dignity, individuality, and materialism. Microcultures are influenced by the home and the family. Microcultures are usually based on national origin, social economic status, religion, gender, age, and disability. Microcultures can vary greatly from the macroculture. Teachers should learn about students' cultural backgrounds in order to increase their academic success. This can help teachers select culturally appropriate instructional strategies, such as cooperative learning or discussions. Teachers may also want to understand their students' family structure, family responsibilities, jobs of parents, and special occasions or holidays. Culturally responsive teachers should recognize the differences between themselves and their students while striving to be non-judgmental.
I really know my students. I know where they're from. I know what languages they speak. I know who they live with. I know why they're here, how they got here. And I think when students know that you care that much about them, they're going to do more for you. And so, yeah, I mean, that's the advice that I try to give to any new teacher in any department, but especially in ELL. I mean, these students need someone to connect with. And so even though I may not speak their language or even look like them, the fact that I know a little bit about their culture or about their country or why they came here, that seems to mean a lot to the students. Make sure they see you around, and like in the hallways and maybe after school at events. If you know they're involved, go see them. I think sometimes as a new teacher we get so stressed and worried about what we're doing that we forget that our students feel the exact same way or 100 times worse because they're teenagers and they are going from, we teach 6 classes a day, they have 9. So it's just everything we feel is elevated for them. And so just to make them feel at ease. And I think in return, it makes you feel better about yourself too and what you're doing, and maybe kind of eases some of the some of the burden.
Teachers should get to know their students' cultural characteristics. Some things to consider are: how do students perceive time? What is the personal distance used in interactions with other students or adults? How does dress differ for age and gender? What celebrations do students observe? What activities are done for enjoyment at home? What resources are available at home and at school? What kinds of work are considered desirable? What level of education do parents desire for their students? What methods of teaching and learning are used? What roles do cooperation and competition play in the culture? What is considered appropriate behavior in schools? A cultural boundary is defined as some type of cultural difference. Some cultural groups cross cultural boundaries more easily than others. To better understand this, we should look at the different cultural groups. There are 3 classifications of cultural groups in the United States. Autonomous minorities are considered minorities only in a numerical sense. In the United States, these would include Jews, Mormons, and the Amish. In the United States, all autonomous minorities are white. Immigrant or voluntary minorities are people who have moved to the United States because they desire greater economic opportunities or more political freedom. Chinese immigrants would be considered voluntary minorities. Caste-like or involuntary minorities are people who were brought to the U.S. against their will or who were conquered. Involuntary minorities in the United States include African Americans, Native Americans, and early Mexican Americans. Some cultural groups, especially involuntary minorities, may struggle with Anglo-European culture and values. These students may be less motivated to learn or follow behavioral expectations at school. Doing well in school could be considered acting white and may alienate the student from their cultural background. Schools can help involuntary minority students by incorporating their culture and language into the curriculum, by encouraging community participation, by allowing students to actively use language, and by advocating for fair and unbiased testing for minority students.